Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to be cooking and food prepping and vacuum sealing some freezer dinners for my husband to keep at work for the upcoming winter season where he works long hours sometimes and needs a quick, healthy dinner. This is a way to do it on a budget. So today we are going to be making some freezer meals. My husband sometimes has to work some crazy hours in the summertime or in the winter time, so he sometimes will need dinner at work because he will have to work late and he won't have anything and his stomach is very sensitive, so and we try to save money, and so we don't want to be like door dashing things to his work and things like that. So we got a vacuum sealer and I finally figured it out. So in here I'm going to do some rice, and then I have a beef chuck roast to do. After that, in here I'll sear it on both sides, and after the rice is cooked and cooled, of course. So let's get started. So a couple of days before this, my rice cooker took a poop on me. Excuse me, Stormy. Sorry, the cat is wanting some snuggles. It's real early in the morning here, and she likes to sit on my lap while I drink coffee before everybody gets up. If you hear her purring, that's what it is. Anyways, our rice cooker broke. I went to use it a couple of days before making this video, and it was just no more. So this is the first time I've used the Instant Pot to make rice, and it turned out really well. I made a lot of rice, a lot more than our rice cooker could have done. So I like to wash my rice and then fill it up. And from all the videos that I watched, you need some type of fat in there to keep it from bubbling over. So I just used some butter. I have about 4 cups of uncooked rice in there and water. And I did mine for the 15-minute setting. It worked. It turned out really well. It did stick to the bottom though, so I don't know how I could fix that next time. If you have any ideas, let me know. Okay, and while I'm waiting on that, I am going to make some biscuits from this fabulous Sue Becker's freshly milled flour book. I'm not going to share the recipe in here because, you know, they want you to buy the book. But I didn't follow it exactly anyways. I'm trying to get my family used to freshly milled flour, so I did half freshly milled flour and half all-purpose flour, and they turned out amazing. So I highly recommend this. All of the recipes that I have tried from this have been phenomenal. So we recently decided to get a mock mill grain mill and start milling our own grains for flour. I will say it has been an adjustment. I have always eaten, white sandwich bread. My kids have always eaten white sandwich bread. Even when I made homemade bread, I would go for the soft, fluffier rolls. So it has been an adjustment. While I personally really like the flavor of the freshly milled flour bread. I think it has an absolutely amazing flavor. The texture is definitely something that you kind of have to get used to, especially if you're not used to whole wheat bread. That has been an adjustment for us. It almost has the texture of like cornbread. It's kind of what it reminds me of, and that's not a bad thing. Like I said, it has a wonderful flavor. It has amazing health benefits. But it has been an adjustment. So I have started doing half and half. Half fresh milled flour, half all-purpose flour, because when I was doing the all freshly milled flour, nobody was eating it. And I personally didn't want to eat it either. So we're going to have to like kind of get used to it. So I'm okay with half and half. That doesn't bother me at all. It turns out great. You still get this, some of the health benefits from the freshly milled flour, and it's delicious. I got the one that goes on your KitchenAid mixer, just to kind of try to save some money. They are an investment. But I will say, if I had it to do over again, I probably would maybe just save up a little longer and go ahead and get um,
the regular grain mill that just, you can sit it on the counter. I just don't have that much counter space. So I was also trying to, not take up a bunch of counter space. But I will say that my mock mill, using that and then using, if I have to use the dough hook or anything, it definitely overheats my, well, I guess I won't say it overheats because it still works, but my KitchenAid gets very, very, very hot and I have to kind of let it have some rests because it does get hot to the touch on the top, but it does still work. The grain mill works very well. I'm very happy with it. So we will see how long this lasts, and hopefully it doesn't make my mixer die. That has been the little, hiccup with this, is that it is a transition, especially for my family to go from store-bought, soft, fluffy, traditional sandwich bread to homemade bread, then to freshly ground bread. It does have a different texture. It is more dense. It is definitely not light and fluffy. I will absolutely say that. I mean, it can be. That's why we're doing half and half, because there's no point in me spending all this time making freshly milled bread or bread out of freshly milled flour if my family is not going to eat it. So that has been a little hiccup for us. Typically, the bread that my kids will eat is the more of the sandwich bread that is lighter and fluffy. Now my 6-year-old, he really likes the whole wheat bread. He likes it warm, fresh out of the oven or the toaster with a lot of butter. When I first make sandwich loaves, now here I'm going to cut up the butter for my biscuits. It is from the refrigerator. I have seen where you could shred it up, but I have one of those graters that you crank, and I feel like it would be a little bit challenging. So this works, and I just actually have been adding it to my mixer with the whisk attachment on like 2 or 4, and doing it that way, and it actually has worked really well. I did this with a pie crust a few weeks ago, and it was the first pie crust that I'd ever made, and it was with freshly milled flour, and I was very nervous, but it turned out very ugly, but very delicious, and that's really all that matters. So I gave that a whirl with these biscuits, doing it or blending the flour and the um, butter together in the mixer with the whisk attachment, and it worked really well. It was a huge time saver, huge arm saver. I do have a pastry cutter, but I don't know. I don't really like it as well as I do using the mixer. I just kind of stand there and watch it and make sure that it's not getting overmixed um, and flinging everywhere. But it actually worked. You kind of want it to end up like the consistency of kinetic sand, maybe a little clumpier than kinetic sand, but that was what I've been going for, and it has turned out amazing every time.
Okay, so I'm gonna put my dough hook on this and pour the buttermilk in. Um, and just kind of let it mix a little bit, and then I'm gonna let it sit because if you are into freshly milled flour, um, you know that it takes longer to absorb the liquid. So I'm gonna do that, and then our rice beeped, so we'll get that set in something to cool, so then we can get it in the freezer bags. And I have flour on my fingernails, so we can get that in the freezer bags and labeled and all the things.
Again, the cookbook that I got that I'm using for this recipe, it's called The Essential Home Ground Flour Book by Sue Becker. That's the Sue Becker from the Bread Beckers. I had never heard of her before, and then I was listening to a Simple Farmhouse Life podcast about freshly milled flour and hers, and then Sue Becker came on the next one, and it was very informative. I really, really like this cookbook. Like I said, I had been making biscuits for a couple of weeks myself, and like homemade biscuits, and I just been Googling recipes, and I had found one that I really liked, but I was staying away from the buttermilk biscuits because I didn't want to have to get a have to buy buttermilk. But in this cookbook, there's a little tip on the side that you can make your own buttermilk with. I used white vinegar, but you could also use lemon juice, or I forget what else other suggestion was on there on the side. So that was really helpful. I have done this several times, and it has turned out absolutely delicious. They kind of remind me of like Cracker Barrel's biscuits. Um, but I have been rolling them out and cutting them with a knife and just cutting them like you would cut up a cake. And for us, 90% of the time, we're either dunking our biscuits or something. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. Our table, while I wipe it and wipe it and wipe it, sometimes there's still glitter that from slime and stuff that ends up not coming off of our table, which is fine. I'm not cooking for other people. I'm just cooking for us, and we all are used to eating glitter apparently. Something that I learned from I think it was the Flower Barn Homestead, who's fabulous, by the way. I watch her on here all the time. She was talking about wanting, when she started making homemade biscuits, wanting them to be flaky and like being able to peel them apart like store-bought biscuits, because that was what she had made when her and her husband first got married, and that's what we're used to because we've had store-bought biscuits for years and years and years. So she suggested laminating it, so you spread it out, roll it out, and then cut it in half and put it on top of each other, the two pieces, and then roll it out again and then cut it again. She does hers about 10 times. I start out with good intentions of counting every time, but then somebody comes and talks to me and I lose count, or I have to stop and go do something. So I try to do it 10-ish times. Sometimes I'm sure it's a little bit more. Sometimes I'm sure it's a little bit less. The next day after this, I made sausage gravy and biscuits for breakfast. And I don't think we were in a big hurry. And I don't think that I even did this part. I think Ashley and I just kind of crumbled them together, and they were not pretty. I will say that they are much prettier when I take the time to do this, but we don't care what they look like. They tasted just as good and they were just as flaky. Please excuse me, I have not been awake for very long and I sneeze 95 times a day. When I first wake up, I sneeze so much, and they have been taking the soybeans off the fields around our house, and so everything is dusty and my allergies are going crazy. Anyway, I love this rolling pin. It was my grandma's rolling pin, and it makes me think of her every time I use it, and that I just wish that she were still alive and I could take her some yummy food and hang out with her. I saw this little tip on, I can't exactly remember her name, but on social media, but it has something to do with the trucker's wife. And she's a little brunette, and most of her videos, she's got a bun on top of her head, and she just does mostly like shorts or reels. And she made biscuits the one day. Now, hers were much more perfect than mine. I just cut the little wonky edge that's not straight, and my pieces are not straight. I can eyeball evenness to save my life. So they're all different sizes, but that kind of works out because I have a wide age range of kids. I mean, my oldest is 15 and my youngest is almost 4. So everybody needs a different size biscuit. For the sausage gravy, they got broken up into bowls anyways. So now I'm dishing up the rice, the rest of it, that way I can wash the inside part of my Instant Pot to get the roast going. I cannot believe the price of roast anymore. But my kids actually don't really like roast. Like I said, this is just going to be some personal freezer meals for my husband to keep at work for the winter, for when he has to work longer evenings and things like that. But
so I'm just going to cover this and let it completely cool, so then I can divide it up into containers to keep it in the refrigerator, and then I'm going to put some in vacuum sealed freezer bags, so that way we have some in the freezer here, my husband has some to take to work, and I'm going to get a roast going in here. I was watching Christine's Notebook the other day, and she made an amazing beef stroganoff. Now, she served hers over noodles, homemade noodles, I think. I haven't tried homemade, like, freshly ground noodles yet. I stopped and borrowed my mom's noodle maker, or like noodle thing that hooks up to the KitchenAid mixer the other day, and I don't know. I may try that today. I also have some potatoes that need used up, so I'm thinking that I may do some mashed potatoes. So I'm thinking, like, if I put the roast in a freezer bag by itself, like I want to do, she had a beef stroganoff recipe, and I want to try that. And so part of me kind of thinks, like, my husband, that way he could change it up. Like, I could have the beef stroganoff in a bag by itself, and then if he is feeling having rice with it that day, he can, you know, warm up the rice with it, or the potatoes. And then I'm gonna have to play with the noodles and freezing them anyways. I need to do some more research on that. So I think today I'm just gonna do, maybe boil some potatoes and make like mashed potatoes. I seen like the trucker wife, I don't know if you follow her. I follow her on Facebook, but she's fabulous, and she had little bags of mashed potatoes, like frozen vacuum sealed bags. So I think I'm gonna try that, and then he can just have lots of options, because like I said, sometimes in the winter he'll have to work late, and he will, you know, need a dinner for there, but he didn't know he was gonna have to work late in the morning. So I like to have, like, last year I canned some soups and things like that, but then he got into them before he even actually needed them. So I want to have lots and lots of things. I know that my older boys like to have rice on hand. So I'm gonna freeze some and leave some here. On Wednesday evenings, I have tutoring with a couple of kids, so we go straight to that after school, and so Adam and Cole kind of have to, like, warm up some stuff for themselves. Plus, you know, they're teenagers now. It is nice for them to just have some quick, healthier stuff to grab and not just junk. So I'll have some of that in the freezer. And I did freeze some pre-baked biscuits that I made yesterday. These biscuits, I got some, I tried a new butcher shop yesterday, and like, my husband has went there before, but I've never actually went inside. I usually wait out in the van with the kids, but I got to go inside the other day, and I found some maple flavored ground sausage. So I'm gonna do some, like, breakfast sausage and gravy, and that's what those biscuits are for. And then I'll probably freeze a few of them, and I will probably most definitely get another batch going. That way David can have biscuits to go with all of these options. So I'm just waiting on the oven to heat up. This is super crooked. I'm waiting on the oven to heat up. Right now it needs to be 400, and it's only 345. So I'm gonna wash this up and get the roast going. Excuse me. So this did stick pretty bad. Like I said, I used to have a rice cooker. It was a non-stick rice cooker. Yes, I know. And the non-stick was coming up. And so the new one that's on the way is stainless steel. I like to have just a smaller option. Sometimes this is a pain in the butt to get out, or I need it for something else, you know. So it is nice to have the rice cooker. The boys can use the rice cooker a lot easier than they can out. But does anybody have, like, a trick to keep it from sticking to this? Because the texture is really nice. I like the texture. I did 4 cups of uncooked rice. I washed it. I used the jasmine rice. I washed it. And then I heard a tip on a comedian's thing, a comedian's little, what do they call it? His stand-up. I don't know. His stand-up. And he was talking about his Asian mom measured up. She put her finger on the rice and measured up to the first knuckle with water. And I tried that because I've always struggled with making rice. But that is, like, awesome. Awesome little tip. that I got from that, and so I use that all the time. So that's how I did that, and my rice is perfect. The texture I wanted. I used quite a bit of butter. I don't know if maybe using more butter next time would fix it. I don't know. Please give me your tips, because this is not so much fun. Look, and I've already like used my scraper, so that's kind of a bummer. Biscuits in the oven. They need to be in there at 400 degrees for, it says about 15 minutes, but I double the recipe because I have a very large family. And then I'm probably going to still have to make more, honestly. I don't know. I haven't washed this stuff yet just because I have a feeling I'm going to make more. So now I'm going to start the saute function on this. I'm going to go get my roast. I'm going to put some avocado oil on the bottom of it because it has a really high smoke point.
This is the first time I have ever used my Instant Pot for a roast. Typically, I always just threw the roast in the crock pot and, let it do its thing. But then when I have been, looking at recipes for roasts and things like that, everybody says that searing it on both sides holds in a lot of the flavor. And I don't know, it's been so long since I had a roast. We don't really eat a lot of roast. Our kids don't really like roast. I don't know why. I absolutely love roast, but it's not something that my children will eat. We used to even, go in and order, like a fourth of a cow and have all that fresh meat in the freezer. And even then, the roasts were just not something that went over very well at my house. So that's why I'm doing it this way and making individual meals for my husband, because every now and then it is nice. I don't think he's a huge fan of roast, but in the winter, I feel like it is very filling and it would keep you nice and full when you're out in the cold. And he, sometimes has to go out on the side of the road and work on a plow in the middle of a snowstorm, and that just breaks my wife heart. So I want him to have something nice and delicious and warm to eat when he gets back to the shop. And that roast just screams winter vibes. So I'm just seasoning it with a little bit of, we use pink Himalayan salt. This is the finely ground. I accidentally bought it, so I've been using it. I bought a ton of it as well. So this, I do have the Instant Pot on sear to put the meat in there. I let the oil get hot. I will say that I did not dry my inside to the Instant Pot after I washed it, and then I put oil in it, and then the water that was in it started popping and cracking, and it was going all over. I ended up having to put the lid back on it. So definitely, if you have to dry the little liner to your Instant Pot or wash it before you sear anything in it, definitely dry it well. I'm just getting used to searing things in this. So yeah, that was a learning experience for me. Almost lost an eyebrow to it popping hot oil all over. So now I just poured some, I had a little bit of bone broth. It would have been chicken bones, but oh well. That I poured in the bottom. Now I'm doing a couple tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce, and then Worcestershire sauce, however you say that. I absolutely do not like that by itself. Like, I'm not one who wants to put that on a steak or anything like that. I absolutely hate it like that. But in things, I really, really do like it. And I think it gave this roast a lot of flavor. Because then I also used the juices, to make a gravy to go over the top of it. And it was very delicious. I was really happy with how this turned out. I like to smell it as I go, just to make sure that nothing made like a funky smell. I've used the soy sauce and the Worcestershire sauce to make like a teriyaki chicken in the crock pot before. That was really good. But I just don't like Worcestershire sauce by itself. It's definitely not my favorite. Here I'm adding just a little bit more pepper just to make sure that it's nice and seasoned. I know the broth that I put in there, I did season, but I definitely didn't want it to be bland, so you just can't go wrong with a little bit more pepper. And so I'm going to put the lid on, and then I'm going to set it. I think I did mine to like the meat stew button, and then I did it for like an hour. This was new to me. We don't eat a lot of beef roasts, so I have never cooked one in my Instant Pot before. It turned out wonderful. I absolutely loved it. I'm glad that I seared it on both sides before I started cooking it. It just kind of peeled apart with forks, so I was very happy with it.
So for the gravy, I'm going to use the soft white wheat, which is the same as I used in this. If you're using, from what I've learned, if you're using yeast, you want a hard wheat, like hard white or hard red. But if you're using like baking, like for, you know, biscuits or cakes or brownies, you want the soft white. So since I don't want the gravy to rise, I'm gonna try that.
So for the gravy, I am melting a stick of butter, and my plan was to do kind of a roux like you would for soups. However, I had just made soup a couple days before this, so I goofed and I added way too much flour to this. I don't exactly know what on earth I was thinking, but it was not gravy. I was thinking soup. Anyways, my gravy ended up super, super thick. It was still delicious. I'm interested to see how this turns out when my husband thaws one out and eats it. I hope that it isn't super thick and dry because he's putting it with rice. So I don't know, he may have to add a little bit of water to it whenever he warms it up in the microwave. I'm hoping that it will, when it unthaws, a lot of times that makes stuff a little more moist. So that's what I'm hoping for, because yeah, I added way too much flour here. And I realized what I had done when I was pouring in the the drippings from cooking the roast in the Instant Pot, and it was just not thinning out. I did learn a tip recently from the Flour Barn Homestead channel on here, that if you let your flour brown a little bit in the butter, don't scorch it, but let it brown just a little bit, it adds a lot of flavor. And I have noticed that that is absolutely accurate. So that's what I'm doing here. Especially with the freshly milled flour, that already has a lot of flavor to it. So then to, add more, a different, like I don't know, it's just a different depth of flavor. So here I'm going to start pouring in the beef broth from the, cooking the chuck roast in the Instant Pot. I poured all of it in there. I definitely I definitely added too much flour. But hey, that next time I will know. I was in soup mode, not gravy mode, and this is what happens. I did end up making sausage gravy the next morning, so I'm glad I goofed up on this one and not the sausage gravy. That would have been terrible to have that as thick as can be. So yeah, this is what I'm kind of noticing. Oof, I goofed up, and this is almost the texture of mashed potatoes. But it's okay. Like I said, it turned out delicious. Even Cole came out and was dunking some of the roast in as I started shredding it up and bagging it up to put in the vacuum seal bags. I even added some cream to try to thin it out a little bit. It didn't work, but I tried. Here I am just taking 2 forks and shredding up the hot beef chuck roast. It's not super hot at this point. I probably could have done this with my fingers, but it was definitely easier with forks. That way, my plan is in the bags to put the rice at the bottom, then put the beef, and then put the gravy over top of that. into the vacuum seal bags. These will just be personal, like one person dinners for my husband to leave in the freezer at his work. We do have a few in the freezer in the garage too, just in case somebody around here wants one of those or something like that. It is good. I tried it just to make sure that it worked well together after I dripped it all over everything. It was very good. It did not look very appetizing. It turned into this weird tan color that was just super thick, but it tasted good, and that is all that matters. Here I'm going to start filling up the freezer bags. I have found that if you flip the top part of the freezer bag down, it is helpful, because if you have a bunch of food on the part where it's going to seal, it's not going to seal properly. I learned this the hard way. So I try to do that, and then I'm going to put in the rice first and then go put the beef in. And then I'm going to put the gravy on top of that, and then I flip it around. Well, that doesn't look like it has gravy on it. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, never mind. I can see it now. I'm going back and doing the voiceovers, and so I'm like, did I forget one? Anyways, I also like to cut this a little bit. I have cut them too much and had to put it in a different bag, so don't do that. Leave yourself a little bit more room than you think you need, but I like to cut it off a little bit, because you can only put so much in the vacuum sealer. So then you have all this like extra bag, and you can't cut it off because it's already vacuum sealed on. This vacuum sealer came from Menards. We have had it for, I don't know, if I'm being really honest, probably like a year. And my husband and I tried it. Well, he tried it a couple times, and I just kind of watched. And then we misplaced the directions, and I was like, oh gosh, forget this. But I finally got it out because I wanted to freeze him some meals for work. And I am so happy that I figured this out, because I have just been freezing like all kinds of things. If there is like a portion or two of a meal left over and nobody is going to eat it, I've just been throwing it in the freezer bags and throwing it in his freezer, so he has plenty of options for this winter when he has to work overtime. I have breakfast options out there and dinner options. I have muffins, rolls, so I highly recommend this if you are living on a budget and try not to eat out a whole lot for work lunches and things like that. I've been putting the rice in the bottom. My hands are clean, so no big deal there. I do think the next time I try this, I may try to do potatoes. My husband really likes rice. I don't like rice as much as he does, I guess, so this doesn't look super appetizing to me, but my husband really loves rice. He loves rice and hamburger. He loves rice and chicken. He loves rice by itself. My boys really like rice as well. You definitely want to make sure that when you are sealing up the bag, there is no food in the area where you are wanting to seal it. So sometimes I have had to, get a clean dish towel or a paper towel and wipe that out. But I just trim it down, and then there's a little area in there where you put the very end of the bag, and then you want to make sure that it seals. That was our issue when my husband and I tried this before. Sometimes it sounds on each end, it sounds like it's latched, but it's not. And so if it's not latched all the way, it's not going to vacuum seal it. There is a dry setting for vacuum sealing dry things, like I froze some biscuits and then vacuum sealed them for my husband. There's a setting for that on here. Or there's a moist setting. So I was using the moist setting, and then it just vacuum seals it, and then it heat seals it. It's really, really neat. I'm very glad that we have this, and I finally figured it out. I am very happy that with how this worked out. It definitely, I got a lot more done than I would have if I would have been canning. Like I said, I have done that in the past, and then my husband ate them, got into the soups before winter even started. So I don't need these foods to last a crazy long time, so I don't feel like I needed to can them and to go through all the steps to do that. This was very fast. It worked out very well. That bag leaked a little bit, so you do got to watch with the juicier things. So hopefully that one seals well. I'm just going to rinse out some of the things. That way nobody wants to go through there and get some like crusty meat or something, and I didn't want it to make a mess in his work refrigerator whenever he takes them out to thaw them out, because like I said, this is going to be these are going to work with him. He is the only person who uses this freezer. Most of the other guys that he works with, they do go out to eat quite a bit. We don't have the budget to go out to eat that often, and my husband's stomach just does not like restaurant food. He can't really handle going out to eat very often.
So that is going to do it for today's video. We did pretty good. Out of the roast and the rice, we have obviously rice left over. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dinners or lunches or whatever for my husband or whoever eats them. So I am going to clean up this disgusting kitchen and get those labeled and in the freezer, and I'm gonna sit my butt down. It is a busy day. It is 7:30, so it's gonna be well past 8 by the time I get to sit down for the day. So as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.